Hey guys, we're out here in the garden and today we have a fun project in store for you. We're going to show you how to do an easy drip irrigation system that works great and takes the stress out of watering all before the heat of summer gets here. Hey guys, Lisa with Our Weekend Homestead. Drip irrigation can seem overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. Let's talk about some of the basics of setting up a drip irrigation system. Cost. It's less expensive than a hard-run sprinkler system. It's easier, it takes less time, and no trenching is required. It's flexible and interchangeable, which is great for crop rotation. It uses less water, but it delivers water right where the plants need it, which produces a healthier plant.
So the first thing you want to do when you're setting up your drip irrigation system is you need to come up with a water supply. There's several ways to do this. The first way here is a hose bib. What we did here is we connected a battery operated timer directly to our hose bib. If you need the hose bib for additional hoses at the same time, you can purchase a splitter and put a splitter on the line, and that way you can still use a hose on one side and you can use the timer on the other. After the battery timer, we go into a check valve. The check valve doesn't allow any of the contaminants from your water line to go back into the city's water supply. After that, we go into a pressure regulator. The pressure regulator regulates the pressure at 25 psi, which is what we need for the drip irrigation system. From there, we just use an assortment of fittings that you're looking for, whether you need 90s or straights, in order to convert it into the poly line. And then we take this poly line and run it to the individual containers or the areas where you want to get your drip irrigation system. The second method that we use is tying into an existing sprinkler line. All we did is we had broadcast sprayers on the top here. We took the head off, found some fittings in 90s to convert it down, went into a pressure regulator, and then back into our poly tube. Because this is tied into a sprinkler valve, your sprinkler valve already has an anti-siphon valve, so there's no need for the check valve like we had to use on the hose bib. The third method is a direct line. For the most part, you treat this just like an existing sprinkler line. The only difference is this line was put in here before the concrete was poured with the intent of being able to water a planter. It too is tied to a sprinkler valve, so it already has the anti-siphon valve, so there's no need for the check valve. But you still need to have the pressure regulator, and then you go into an adapter which ties it into your poly tube and then carries that off to wherever you're trying to get your water to. I thought we'd take a little bit of time and just kind of go over some of the more popular accessories that goes with your drip system. At the heart of everything, we have the poly tube. This is basically the supply line that we take to all the different areas that you want to do watering to. In this section here, we have emitters and sprinklers. Emitters come in all different shapes and sizes. They have little bubbling emitters where you connect the 1/4-inch micro tube to, and then that then has water comes up and bubbles over the top. We also have sprinklers that are like full-fledged sprinklers with little sprinkler tips on the top. You can also buy those same tips individually, and you can use these in other holders and different applications. You have these things here which basically tell you how much each one has a different value, is meaning how many gallons per hour. What we found that we like the most moving forward are these adjustable emitters, so that depending on if the plant needs more or less water, they twist and allow you to get less or more water. From there, we go to the different connectors. The 1/4-inch micro tube plugs into these different connectors, and I'm going to show you guys an example in a minute. You can do a T with the same connector. They also have 90-degree L's. And then they have what's called a goof plug. And this is basically if you punch a hole into the poly tube and you don't like it, you can plug the goof plug back in there and it seals up the hole. With some of the stuff that we're gonna do today, we're gonna take a bed that already has, I believe, some bubblers in it, and we're gonna replace it with what they call a drip line. This stuff is the 1/4 inch micro tube that basically, this stuff specifically, has holes drilled every 6 inches. It's available with holes at different increments depending on how often or how much water you need on your different rows. They also make T's for the poly tube, 90s, and then they also have these two things are caps. One of the examples for this is if you're coming to an end of a line and you have the poly tube, obviously the water's gonna go out. You can take these caps, this piece just slides right in here. It's a pressure fit type scenario. Or you can slide this thing over like this, kink it, and that'll stop the water from coming out of the end. We also use landscape staples, so you can push the poly tube down and hold it in. They also make plastic hold down clamps. And for the micro tube, they make these little V ones. These are Lisa's personal favorites. You can basically snap them in place and they hold the tube where you want it. It's really simple to create one of these. You take your, let's say your micro tube, and you take one of your little fittings and it just fits it in there past the barb. And then figure out where you want it to come out of your hole. It punches a little hole inside of it. And then you just press the piece in there, and believe it or not, that'll be a watertight seal for a long time to come. Then you can take your emitter, pop that on, and basically set that in your garden where you want it. Again, you get the poly tube in the close proximity of where you want it, and then you take the micro tube in order to fine tune where you want that specific emitter. And again, you can take the clamp, put that on there, make sure it goes to where you want it, and that's basically the heart of how the drip system works.
Here we have 7 grow bags that we need to get drip lines to. We stretched out our main poly line, taking into account any obstacles and corners so that we would have enough line to work with. In our backyard garden, we always have to be mindful and one step ahead of the land shark that likes to mess with anything to do with water. After cutting our 2 runs, we connected them with a 90-degree corner connector. Then we used a figure 8 end cap to seal off the line at the far end. Now we're ready to attach it to our existing water supply. We used a T, a short piece of poly, a 90-degree corner, and this attached to our existing fittings at our battery-operated timer. The next step is to prep your microtubing with an end connector and an emitter. This takes some finger strength, and we find that if you lay the microtubing in the sun, it softens the material and makes it easier to attach the fittings. Using the punch tool, punch a hole in the poly line to attach your microtubing. Then place your emitter next to your plant and secure it with a stake. This stock tank container bed has an existing drip system that I want to change out. Since I'm growing beans and carrots in this bed this time, I want to run a drip line instead of individual emitters. First, I removed all the old lines that I don't want to use. Then I plugged all the holes with goof plugs. I had already measured out my drip line and attached an end connector and also a goof plug at the far end to stop the water. Using the punch tool, I created a new hole in the poly tubing to attach my drip line. Then I laid it out to my liking and secured it with landscape staples. Now that I have my drip system in place in all my container beds and grow bags, it's time to go back around and test the system and adjust all the emitters. Since I'm using drip line and sprinkler emitters on the same station, I up the amount of time it runs so that the drip line saturates properly, but I ended up turning the sprinkler emitters way down as to not flood those plants. What I love about drip irrigation is how easy it is to install and make changes as your garden evolves. Add a plant, or in my case 10, punch a hole, add a line, and you're good to go. Having this system in place helps me stay on top of watering, which here where we live is quite the task. Now this doesn't mean that I don't regularly check my soil moisture or that I don't have to do additional hand watering as needed, but having the drip irrigation in place, I know my plants will get the majority of the water they need, and I can go away for a few days at a time and not worry that our garden will suffer.
All right, so that wraps up our drip irrigation project for today. We have a whole lot more coming up with leafcutter bees coming. Our honeybees should be here. We're going to be making some soap and doing a garden tour. So if you don't want to miss out on any of our upcoming videos, be sure to hit the subscribe and the notification bell so that you get a warning when the next video comes out. We love connecting with you, so if you want to leave us a question or a comment, please do so below. And if you liked our video, be sure to give us a thumbs up. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.